Você sabia que apenas 5% dos brasileiros têm conhecimento em inglês e desses apenas 1% tem fluência? Escolhemos o curso A Jornada do Autodidata em Inglês para aqueles que têm interesse em destravar a fluência de vez. Não perca tempo, clique no primeiro link da descrição e descubra mais. Bora pro vídeo!
Because basically the deal I made with Netflix was, why don't we do a director's cut as part of the process rather than as a response to it? And I was like, that's really smart. Yeah. Is there any way it could be PG-13? That was the whole thing with Batman versus Superman. I remember the ratings board said, we just don't like the idea of Batman fighting Superman. I was like, well, what is that? Like, but how is that your opinion? Like, how is that? That has nothing to do with the rating. I make you a PG-13 version. I wrote this script and I said, this is the script I want to make. And they said, that is insane. And then you let me, as a bonus, you just let me make this version exactly as I think. When you see the R-rated version of Rebel Moon, you're gonna be like, this is heavy metal, like come to life is really what it is. And when you see the R-rated version of Rebel Moon when it comes out, because basically the deal I made with Netflix was, they said, I wrote this script and I said, this is the script I want to make, and they said, that is insane. And I said, yeah, but it's like heavy metal, but like in live action.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah. Is there any way it could be PG-13? And I was like, well, if it's PG-13, it kind of misses the whole point a little bit. But I can imagine that, for a mass audience and for viewership, that seems like the smart way to go. I go, what about this? What if I take this script, I make you a PG-13 version that you can just blast into the world and hopefully as many people see it as possible. And then you let me, as a bonus, you just let me make this version exactly as I think. And they were like, okay, that sounds cool. So coming at the end of the summer, you'll see my 2 3-hour versions of Rebel Moon that are like hard R-rated, the hardest.
What you wanted to do.
Which I exactly wanted to do. So they said, yeah, go do that. And so they were able, because normally when I do this, director's cuts, which is a thing now I'm weirdly famous for, the director's cuts were always an answer to a thing that the studio made me do, right? Like, here's my movie. They're like, yeah, we really want you to cut these parts out because they're not cool. They're like, the movie's too long or the movie's too violent or whatever. And I would be like, wow, really? Because I really think that's kind of the why of the movie. And they'd be like, no, it's really important. The focus groups told us that they don't like that, so take it out. So I'd take it out, but then I'd go like, I'd go over to home video right across the street and I'd be like, hey, guys, you want another movie to release? Because I got the shit. And they'd be like, absolutely, whatever you say. Because, at that time, there was a huge market for directors. It gave them a second kick at the can in home video, right? So they would be like, that's so cool. We get a whole other movie to market that like never before seen footage.
Right.
It just feels like a cool thing. And so that was how I've always done my director's cuts, always as a response to what the studio was telling me couldn't be in the movie. Because I never planned. I would always go into it like bright-eyed, like, oh, everyone's going to love this. The studio, when you see my cut, you're going to think it's amazing. And they would like look at it and go like, bro, like this is too much. And so that's where my director's cuts kind of as a practice were born. It was born out of that, me needing to show the world what I intended originally. And so, by the time now that I've got to Netflix with this Rebel Moon movie and my sort of the mythology around my director's cuts was kind of a thing, especially with Justice League, as you can imagine. They were like, you know what? Why don't we do a director's cut as part of the process rather than as a response to it? And I was like, that's really smart. Like, that's really cool because in a lot of ways, I totally get the economics of making a PG-13 version of this insane genre movie. Because what I'm asking, from a budgetary standpoint is high for like a boutique-y space movie that's a heavy metal comic. That's like people who love that will love it more than anything else, right? If I can land that, they'll think it's the coolest thing ever. But like for a mass audience, it might not be exactly what you would imagine. So I'm like, I can do both. And that's kind of what, and that's kind of where and that's why when you see the R-rated version of Rebel Moon, you're gonna be like, fuck, this is heavy metal, like come to life is really what it is. You know, I've always been like the hugest fan of heavy metal. I think it's like the fucking cool, it was the coolest thing.
Heavy metal was amazing.
It's like, it always like made me, it kind of broke me for comics a little bit because, you know, it was always like super sexy and super violent. And so you'd get a normal comic and be like, when are they gonna start fucking? Because, you know, it's...
Yeah, it was always sexual. So is it hard to do the PG-13 version?
It was very hard. It was really...
Is it conflicted? Like, what does
it was
feel
super
like?
conflicted. Although the only thing I will say is that I was liberated by the fact that I knew the R-rated version exists. So there was, in the other versions of this work, in the other director's cuts, there was a version where that director's cut never was seen. There's a very good chance that that movie never saw the light of day, because where would you show it?
Right.
In the old world, in the movie days,
Right.
all you had was DVD as your option. And if DVD said, yeah, we're good with like just the normal version, then that would have been it.
Yeah.
And it would just die a death. And you would, whatever you intended
Fuck.
for the movie would just never be seen. And that's just how it was. And so in this scenario, I was like super grateful to Netflix, because I was like, you guys have like done a thing that I've never been able to do in my entire career. And that is like, know that this version of the movie exists and it's going to be seen. So I'm happy to do whatever you guys think is right for the PG-13. I'm like, I'm a good soldier and I'm proud of it and I love it. But yes, it is different from like what I, was.
What if the R version, is it NC-17 or R? Did they do NC-17 anymore?
It's, I won't say the exact rating. We're waiting to see. We're still like up against it, but we're trying to get it. It's TVMA right now.
What does that mean?
I don't know. No one does.
Mature audiences?
Yeah, like any TV show that's not, because like in TV, the cool thing about TV is they have TV 14. And then it goes to TVMA. TVMA literally has no top on it. Like I think it's like almost like porn is TVMA.
Is
Like,
there...
I don't know what, look, no one understands the ratings. No one does. It's an alchemy that is impossible to know.
It's all subjective.
It's
right?
all subjective and bizarre. And so, and they also, it's genre related, right? So like say for instance, the ratings board might say something like, well, this is a sci-fi movie, so it's too much. But if it was a horror movie, it'd be fine. But it's a sci-fi movie, so it's not fine. Or it's a superhero movie. That was the whole thing with Batman versus Superman. I remember the ratings board said, we just don't like the idea of Batman fighting Superman. I was like, well, what is that? Like, but how is that your opinion? Like, how is that? That has nothing to do with the rating.
The ratings didn't like
yeah, they
that?
kept saying, like, they kept making it an R. They kept coming back with an R for us. And we were like, what do you want us to cut out? And they were like, well, we just don't like the idea of Batman fighting Superman. I was like, I can't take that out. That's the movie.
That's so ridiculous that they would have that kind of power.
So it was crazy. So we really had to trim it super.
Do you think that affected the final version?
I mean, if you see the director's cut of Batman vs. Superman, it's much better. It's a much better movie. In my opinion, it's a much better movie.
Well, it's representative of what you actually wanted to create.
Yeah, and I think that